being here. This is an important issue, and civil debate is hard to find on it, so it's great to find someone willing to do that. Energy issues are really important because energy is part of everything we do. For example, in a 2008 study done at AEI by Green and Mather found that 46% of the energy we use is used indirectly and embodied in products like pharmaceuticals and other forms of healthcare, food, transportation, and housing. The policy choices we make about energy thus affect not just the size and scope of government, but almost every aspect of our lives through their impact on energy costs. Green energy proponents argue that we need to provide massive federal subsidies and large unfunded mandates to state and local governments and businesses to enable us to radically transform our economy. For example, Ms. Gordon has testified recently before the Senate Subcommittee on Green Jobs and the New Economy that, quote, we are currently in the process of switching our entire energy infrastructure over from capital-intensive, risky, and often highly polluting energy sources to clean, labor-intensive, clean energy sources. It's easy to see why this vision is so attractive to politicians, so attractive that they want to borrow money from our children so that they can spend it now on this transformation. Clean energy sounds so much nicer than risky and highly polluting energy. Moreover, we're told that we must make this transition or risk being left behind by China. And China, we are assured by the Secretary of Commerce, is investing $12 billion a month in green technology. There's a lot of problems with this view, and I want to just focus on a couple. First, if innovation in green energy is such a great thing, why isn't it happening without the government spending a lot of money and issuing a lot of rules to force people to do things that they wouldn't otherwise be willing to do? Well, in fact, the historical record shows that we don't need subsidies or mandates to innovate with respect to energy. Innovation in energy is a great thing, and we've seen a lot of it in the past 150 years. For example, an improvement in the quality and quantity of gasoline refined from crude oil, which was termed the octane wars, occurred in the 1920s and 30s, driving the price of 100-octane fuel from $25 per ounce in 1934 to 30 cents per ounce in 1935. Per gallon, excuse me, in 1935. Ammonia. The energy used in an ammonia plant today is 30% lower than in a similar plant in 1970, and that's approaching the theoretical minimum for the production of ammonia. Aluminum. The energy per kilogram of smelting fell by 35% from 1960 to 200, and the total energy intensity of aluminum fell by 58%. In steel, energy per ton fell 60% from 1980 to 2006. Between 1900 and 2000, we went from transforming 21% of the energy used to useful outputs when we were engaged in heating things to using 86% while cutting the per unit cost by more than 2/3. I could go on and on and on. In every area we use energy, we have become more efficient, and we've become more efficient without government subsidies and mandates. So the first question that I think green energy proponents need to answer is why allowing this process to continue is insufficient. In other words, why is the strategy that succeeded for more than 100 years in the United States and elsewhere need to be set aside in favor of a strategy of using the political process to choose energy technologies? And that question is hard to answer. The political strategy has been tried, and it's failed miserably. In centrally planned economies from Europe to Asia to Africa, energy technologies have been chosen through the political process and have not worked. Where the 20th century saw a proliferation of bad designs, horrific pollution, and unreliable energy, that was mostly in cases where the political process was used to choose the technology. In our own country, the disastrous 1970s synfuels program is an excellent example of this. So that answer leads us to the second problem. What green energy proponents are actually proposing to do, despite the rhetoric, is to borrow money from our children and grandchildren and turn it over to politically well-connected corporations like General Electric, which managed the amazing feat of landing its CEO in the White House and paying no federal income tax in the same year as its profits soared. Maybe those were not coincidental events. And Archer's Daniel Midland, which has been successfully farming the federal government for decades. Today's feeding frenzy is close at hand, but this is not something that's unique to the Obama administration. This is the bipartisan history of government-run energy policies in the United States. Now, that's not what Ms. Gordon is going to say she wants to accomplish, but it's what green energy proponents have managed to accomplish thus far. And the reason green energy programs is that they are classic examples of what Bruce Yandel termed a bootleggers and Baptist coalition in an article he wrote for Regulation magazine back in the 1980s for Cato. A Bootleggers and Baptist Coalition is named after the groups that secured the Sunday closing laws that forbid liquor sales in much of the South. Bootleggers like the restriction on legal liquor sales because it closes the stores that compete with them. But they cannot persuade politicians to adopt pro-bootlegger policies aimed at raising prices for consumers without a reason that sounds good to voters. The Baptists in this implicit coalition provide the cover story. They offer a plausible reason to vote for the Sunday closing laws other than lining the pockets of the bootleggers. In the green energy debate, green energy proponents play the role of the Baptists, providing ideological cover for the looting of the current and future taxpayers by the likes of GE and ADM. Now, I don't think that the Center for American Progress, Ms. Gordon, or most of the other proponents of green energy actually intend to pour money into GE's or ADM's pockets, but that is what the record of green energy programs is, and that is what always happens when politics determines what technology